I'm Karlyn Lothery, and welcome to the Tip of the Week. This week we're focusing on creating great talking points. A lot of times the clients who are actually sitting in my workshop room are the spokespeople. The people who send them to me are all of the people who write those wonderful talking points and want to know, why can't my spokesperson stay on message? Why can't they stay with the talking points? Well, today we're going to focus on creating those talking points so that your spokesperson says what you want them to say every time they step in front of that reporter. So let's look at the top 5 things that they should be realizing or that you should include in your talking points. Number 1, first and foremost, have a clear goal in mind for the interview that your spokesperson is going to do. I call it create a headline. Know the headline before you go in, so your spokesperson always knows what's the most important point that they need to get back to for each question, or at least at the end of a series of questions. Number 2, when you're writing your talking points, don't just dump talking points on a page. Bucket them. That is to say, categorize them. Anything related to budget, put them in one category and give them the header. Anything related to operations, you put that in another bucket or another header. Anything that are the problem questions that you hope the reporter won't ask, but you know they probably will, put those in another category. What happens when you categorize or bucket your question list or your talking point list? You give your spokesperson something to think about. They listen for those buzzwords. They listen for the catchphrase when the reporter is asking the question, so they know what bucket to go into and which point is probably going to stand out the best. Next, please keep your numbers to a minimum. Having somebody remember that there were 32 of this and 57 of that and 365 of those, I'm tired of thinking about it. If you talk about things and round them up or down, more than 20%, less than 50. If the number is 47, call it less than 50. If the number is 98, almost 100%. Whatever that is, but round your numbers so that they don't have to focus on being so absolutely specific. That will take some of their pressure off, keep some of their nerves down, and allow them to focus on their real answers and the real message. Also, examples prove wonderfully well for creating a great soundbite. If you have a story, a word picture, or anything else that you can give them that they can own for themselves and use in that interview, it will go miles in the next interview. But here's the thing, if they practice that example and practice telling that story and it still doesn't go well after 2 or 3 or 4 times of practicing, you might want to find another one. Or tell them, think about an example that proves this key point, and so they can come up with one that they'll be able to use that feels very natural to them. And that's okay if they just step a little bit outside of the box that you've created for them. And finally, always, and I mean always, have a meeting before the meeting. Just like you need a meeting before the meeting in a business sense, before you're doing a big deal, all the parties talk a little bit behind the doors before they get into the main room. Have that meeting before the meeting with your spokesperson. In other words, meet up with them no fewer than 5 minutes. Generally, if you've got someone who's very experienced, they probably won't need any more than 15 minutes. But it's a chance for them to decompress, get out of whatever work they were working on before speaking with you and the reporter, and get focused on the interview at hand. When you don't do a meeting before the meeting, here's what happens. They are warming up during the first 5 or 6 questions the reporter asks. If the reporter only asks 8, your spokesperson is only on message and on point and focused really well for 2 questions. Give them the benefit of the doubt, give them the extra mile before they get into that interview, and do the meeting before the meeting. Run through the talking points, make sure that they know who they're talking to, who their audience is. Refresh that, remind them so they can disengage from the previous work and re-engage with this interview and give them their best. You know, I always say great communication makes the difference between where you are and where you want to be. Well, sticking to these points when you're creating your talking points will be one thing that gets you one step further to where you want to be.